The story begins with a grandfather and his granddaughter who are currently visiting a bicycle shop. Unfortunately, the blue bicycle that the granddaughter wanted was out of stock. The shopkeeper suggested that they both come back tomorrow because the blue bicycle will only be available tomorrow. Shortly after the grandfather and granddaughter left, the shopkeeper immediately contacted his men, telling them to steal a blue bicycle parked in a school area. As it turned out, the stolen bicycle belonged to a girl named Matilda. Matilda looked very sad about the loss of her favorite bicycle. Plus, her mother's car often broke down, so she was late getting to school. In the middle of that, Matilda's mom was called by her husband named Marcus. Marcus is a special forces soldier currently serving in Afghanistan. Marcus called regarding a change in plans regarding his return, which turned out to be delayed for another 3 months. Marcus's wife seemed disappointed about the delay, as Matilda had missed her father very much. In the next scene, there are 2 marketing employees named Otto and Lennart. Both of them were fired that day because they were deemed unable to reach the company's target. Then Otto went home on the train while paying attention to the people on the train, such as a man who threw away his food, even though the food had not been touched at all. Otto's attention was also drawn to a tattooed man who looked very suspicious. Then Matilda and her mother were no choice to board because the mother's car was still broken down. Because he could not bear to see Matilda and her mother standing, Otto then gave his seat. Then shortly after that, the train had an accident. Most of the passengers died in the accident, including Matilda's mother. Meanwhile, Otto and Matilda only suffered minor injuries. When he wanted to leave the hospital, Otto's attention was drawn to Matilda, who looked sad and devastated by the death of her mother. The death of his wife also reached the ears of Marcus, Matilda's father. Finally, he was allowed to take leave. Long story short, Marcus has arrived in his country. It seems that Marcus is still devastated and feels sorry for having failed to protect his family due to being too busy with state duties. After that, Marcus went straight to the hospital to see his wife's body. But the doctor did not recommend it because the condition of his wife's corpse was very sad. The doctor thought that will make Marcus trauma. But Marcus insisted on seeing his wife's body for the last time. The scene switches to Otto, who is watching the news about the accident. It turns out that the tattooed man he saw on the train was a gang leader named Jonna Ulriksson or Eagle, who was also killed. It was also reported that the gangster group led by Eagle was hostile to the gangster group called Justice. Knowing this, Otto immediately speculated that this accident had been planned to kill Eagle. At that moment, Otto reported to the police about his suspicions. Before the accident occurred, Otto had seen a man throw away food that he had not touched and rushed out of the train. Otto suspected that the food contained something that caused the accident. Otto's suspicions led to the Justice gangsters, who deliberately planned the accident to kill Eagle, the gangster leader, who was known to be the Justice group's archenemy. However, the police thought that Otto was hallucinating as a result of his minor accident. This was because Otto's suspicions made no sense at all and seemed far-fetched. Not giving up hope, Otto went straight to his best friend, Lennart. Otto asked Lennart for help to hack into the train website to find out the background of the man who threw away the food. This was because Otto suspected that the food contained something that caused the accident. Otto believes that the accident occurred as a result of a deliberate act, or could be said to have been planned from the start. On the contrary, the police have confirmed that the accident occurred due to technical problems. Meanwhile, Matilda was devastated by her mother's death. Marcus was too, but he had to try his best to stay strong, especially in front of his daughter Matilda. That night, Marcus was visited by Otto and Lennart. It turns out that Lennart has managed to hack into the info site for train accident victims. And from one of them, they got information about Matilda's father, Marcus, who turned out to be a special forces soldier. Their goal is none other than to tell Marcus about the train accident that killed his wife. Otto and Lennart believe there are indications of deliberation regarding the accident. They both asked Marcus to join in investigating this case to the end. Hearing this, Marcus immediately took them both to the warehouse to continue their version of the story. Without much ado, Otto immediately told about the man who threw something away shortly before the accident occurred. Otto also told him about Eagle, the gangster leader who seemed to be targeted. Otto had reported this to the police, but he was considered to be making it up and told was hallucinating. Knowing that his wife's death was not due to an ordinary accident, of course Marcus would not remain silent. And Marcus was determined to find the perpetrator, even though it was not as easy as turning his palm, because the only clue Otto found was the CCTV screenshot of the man who threw the food. Otto and Lennart are also determined to meet their acquaintances, who can identify facial recognition through photos, so that the identity of the food waster can be found immediately. In a short time, a friend of Otto's named Emmenthaler, or for simplicity, let's call him Eamon, a stocky man who looks innocent but is a genius. All day long, the three of them tried to track down the identity of the suspect, but still did not find a bright spot. Until Lennart forced Eamon to lower his accuracy rate to 95%. But Eamon explained that the standard accuracy was 98%. If it is lowered, the fear is that it will misidentify people. But Lennart continued to insist because he was getting tired of waiting too long. Inevitably, Eamon was no choice to comply. After the accuracy rate was lowered to 95%, they finally managed to find the suspect they were looking for. He was a man named Pelle, who was known to be the younger brother of the head of the Justice gangster group. This certainly strengthened Otto's suspicion that the attack was deliberate to eliminate Eagle, the head of the gangster group, the enemy of the Justice group. Behind that, Marcus was upset because his daughter still hadn't come home, even though it was late at night. It turned out that Matilda was with her boyfriend named Sirius, or commonly called Siri. Marcus then told his daughter to come in immediately, where it made Matilda's boyfriend annoyed and immediately said some insulted Marcus. Responding to the insolent attitude of his daughter's boyfriend, this is what Marcus did. He slapped his daughter's boyfriend till down to the ground, and that made Matilda angry and left them. Realizing that his actions had gone too far, Mark finally apologized to Matilda. However, it seems that Matilda is still upset. The next morning when she was going to school, Mark asked Matilda to bring her boyfriend home soon, so that Marcus can apologize as well as get acquainted with his daughter's boyfriend. Shortly after that, Marcus was visited by Otto and his two friends carrying their investigation files. Without wasting time, the four of them went straight to the suspect's house, namely Pelle, the younger brother of the head of the Justice gangster. However, the four of them were greeted at gunpoint by Pelle. Pelle forced them to leave or die, and they immediately complied. However, when he wanted to get into the car, Marcus came back again and immediately broke Pelle's neck until he died on the spot. Otto and Lennart could only frown at Marcus's brutality, but not so with Eamon. He was actually happy to see a gangster, a trash like Pelle, die in a terrible way. Then Otto told his two friends to wait in the car, while he would try to clean the crime scene to remove Marcus' fingerprints. While going to look for detergent inside, Otto accidentally found a man who was being held captive. Frightened, Otto immediately rushed to the car and forgot to clean up the crime scene. In the evening, Matilda takes her boyfriend to dinner with her father. On this occasion, Matilda suggested that her father consult a psychiatrist. This was because Marcus's attitude had changed considerably upon his return from war duty, coupled with the sudden death of his wife. However, Marcus rejected his daughter's suggestion. He felt that his character had always been like this, coupled with the harsh upbringing of his military unit. After dinner, Marcus immediately relaxed while watching television. There happened to be news related to the Justice gangster group, which was considered to be troubling the country because of their illegal business and brutality. Ironically, they always escape the law because they have connections with government officials. Knowing this, Marcus was furious and even more eager to slaughter the Justice group. The next morning, Marcus immediately invited Otto and the others to gather. Here, Marcus asked his three friends to collect information about all members of the Justice group, because Marcus plans to slaughter them all for revenge. Hearing this, Eamon and Lennart agreed and were willing to help. But Otto refused because this action had gone too far, afraid it will cause havoc in the future, but because he was pressed, Otto no have choice except agree about that. At that very moment, the four of them would head to Immen's house to track down the identities of the Justice Group members. When they want to leave, Matilda happened to come home. Otto, who saw it, immediately hid, for fear that Matilda would suspect him, because Matilda knew Otto's face, who was also on the train before the accident occurred. Lennart argued that he and Immen were psychiatrists contacted by Marcus to heal Marcus and Matilda's trauma. Hearing this, Matilda was very happy because her father finally accepted her advice to consult a psychiatrist. Reluctantly, Lennart had to pretend to be an impromptu psychiatrist to listen to all Matilda's outpourings. Behind that, the man held hostage by Pelle is now being interrogated by Pelle's brother, the gangster leader named Kurt. The man being held hostage is known as Bodaska. Kurt forced Bodaska to tell him who had killed his brother Pelle. Fearing death, Bodaska told him. He didn't know exactly who killed Pelle, but he heard one of the perpetrators mention the name, that is Immen. From that clue, Kurt told his men to investigate who the man named Immen was. Turning to Marcus, they deliberately investigated members of the Justice Group in the warehouse of Marcus' house, so that Matilda would not be suspicious. But unfortunately, the computer in Marcus' house was very slow. Immen then told the three of them to pick up the computer at his house. At that moment, the three of them went to Immen's house. But when they got there, it turned out that there was already a Justice Group staking out Immen's house. When they want to enter the house, the three of them were attacked. Marcus, who is a trained Special Forces, was able to turn the situation back by eliminating them all. As it turned out, there was Bodaska in the car, who they were holding captive. Marcus immediately rescued him and brought him to home. Arriving home, Marcus asked the three of them to stay at his house temporarily. That way, their safety would be better guaranteed from the Justice Group's attacks. From the events of this night, Matilda knew about her father's revenge mission, and she understood. The next day, Marcus immediately taught them how to shoot properly. This was done so that they could protect themselves from the Justice Group. Behind that, Kurt has gotten info on all the perpetrators of his brother's murder, and he also intends to launch a revenge mission. However, they are still having trouble finding the location of the perpetrators, that is Marcus and friends. Meanwhile, Matilda has started to get close to her father's three new friends, especially Otto. However, unbeknownst to Matilda, Siri, her boyfriend, uploaded a photo of himself with Otto on Instagram. At the same time, Immen had managed to hack into the cell phones of Justice's gangsters. From there, Immen got a clue that some of the gangsters would gather at a bar. Long story short, the four of them were already in front of the bar. When the gangsters want to go home, Marcus immediately slaughtered them all. Immen, who had intended to help, became heartless after dealing with his target. Marcus was the one who finally intervened. The next morning, when Justice's group was gathering, one of their boy found Otto's video posted on Siri's Instagram. Coincidentally, this boy went to the same school as Siri, namely Matilda's boyfriend. Turning to Otto, who is currently talking to Bodaska, Otto asks why Bodaska can deal with gangsters like Pelle. Bodaska replies, because he was sold by his mother to become a gigolo. Otto asked if Bodaska knew about the train accident that killed many people. Bodaska replied that everyone in Denmark knew about the accident, but on the day of the accident, Pelle and Bodaska were in Germany. Hearing this, of course, Otto was very surprised, because it turned out that they had killed the wrong target. And sure enough, after further investigation, it turned out that the real culprit was not Pelle. This error occurred due to the accuracy that was reduced to 95% when photo identification was carried out at that time. Knowing this, of course, Marcus was very disappointed and angry. Not only has he killed the wrong person, Marcus also now has to deal with the most feared gangster group in Denmark. To express his disappointment, Marcus went straight into the bathroom. Then he smashed the items there. Then Otto came in to calm him down. As it turned out, the food thrower on the train was a Turkmen who worked at the train station, and the actual fact that the accident occurred purely due to a technical error, without anyone deliberately sabotaging it. Meanwhile, Kurt and his group came to Siri's residence. They forced Siri to tell them where Otto's address was. Because he could no longer hold being tortured, inevitably, Siri was no choice to say it. A few hours after that, Justice's group came shooting at Marcus' house and almost killed Matilda. Fortunately, Marcus saved her in time, even though he was the one who was shot. Then Marcus told Matilda to hide, while he would try to slaughter them all. When Marcus was focused on slaughtering them one by one, at that moment, Matilda was captured by Kurt. In the end, Marcus gave up for the sake of his daughter's safety. Marcus resigned himself to be finished off and begged them to release his daughter. When Marcus wanted to be killed, Otto and the others appeared to open fire on the Justice group with successive shots. Marcus was also involved, and in the end, they all died and left only one person, that is Kurt. But in the end, the gangster leader also met his death. Unfortunately, Matilda was shot, and Marcus carried his daughter, while waiting for the ambulance to arrive soon. Behind that, Marcus himself was dying, having been shot multiple times. The scene moves a few months later, precisely on Christmas Eve. Now Marcus already considers Otto and the others as family. Especially thanks to the three of them, Marcus was freed from punishment. Because all the bodies of the Justice group they cleaned up, without leaving the slightest evidence and fingerprints. At the end of the movie, it appears that the grandfather has managed to buy a blue bicycle for his granddaughter as a Christmas present. The blue bicycle belonged to Matilda, who was the beginning of all this chaos. With a callback story like that, the movie ended.